Hi, Chris. It is time for another monthly dragon. Last time we had the very intriguing and interesting Hungarian variation or the Hungarian setup. And this time it's also a little bit part of it. It's all yours. What are we going to do today about this?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody watching here. So we are going to talk a little bit more about the Hungarian, but more specifically, some of White's attempts to avoid this variation, which has become quite popular. For those that might have missed the previous one, obviously we would always recommend you catching it up, but I'm going to touch on it anyhow. So essentially here we have the Sicilian defense, our favorite. We have our dragon variation. And now, everybody, I just want to talk. I want to deviate because I want to test Arna for a second. So we have bishop to c4
All right.
instead of bishop e3. Now, Arna, do you remember what might happen if black plays knight c6 in this position here?
Yes.
Falling for a potential trap.
Yes, there was a trap. So how exactly did it go? I think it was something. It had to do something with the f7 and the
You
pawn.
are my word. You are fantastic. You
Oh,
are absolutely fantastic. So
lucky.
So it's knight takes knight. One of the few times this is a good idea is then when White's going to strike out and advance this pawn. So you can take on c6 if you can follow it up with this pawn to e5. And the little trap here is if black takes, then we have a spot of overloading going on with bishop takes f7 check, because the king, of course, has to take the bishop, but it's required to take the queen, to defend the queen at the same time. So knight c6 is a mistake in this position. Now, after, say, bishop to g7, castles, then black castles would seem very sensible for black here, but knight c6 is possible here because the same trap doesn't work. Now, obviously, there's going to be a couple of reasons why. First things first, bishop takes pawn check is no good now because the black rook would defend the queen along the back rank. But the point is, after queen takes queen, king takes queen, if the bishop takes the pawn here on f7, now black can play e6.
Beautiful.
And trap that queen with king to e7. So this is a sneaky little trap here. So White might think he's trapping black, but in fact it would be the other way around.
Which is actually pretty cool. Exactly. Yeah. That's a very counter trap. Sorry.
Counter track. Now, the point is, and we're going to get onto that in the main game. Here, we're back to normality. Bishop to e3 with White seemingly about to do the Yugoslav attack, and black plays knight c6. Now, you're thinking, well, hang on, why not go bishop g7? But those that saw last week will know that black might be doing this for a reason, because after h5, as we saw last time around, queen to d2, the system, the Hungarian Dragon, sees black trade off the knights in the middle, and this bishop overshoot to the square h6 instead of just simply dropping itself into the normal g7 fianchetto square for the dragon bishop. So that would be the normal Hungarian variation. Actually, that's been doing quite well, Arna. So what White's been thinking is, how about I just delay queen d2 and do a different developing move and wait for this bishop to commit itself to g7 so I don't have to worry about that. Okay. So of all the available moves that could be useful, probably bishop c4, well, that's the main one. The only problem with that is White might not have actually wanted to do that. White might, good grief, I'm having problems with my English language today, queen to d2, and castles might have wanted to have been preferred to bishop c4. So there's already something slightly committal by playing the move bishop to c4, although we can see why there's potential weaknesses down here. So it doesn't, far from a ridiculous move. So now over to black, who plays bishop d7. Now, this is where I wanted to highlight something.
Okay.
So if, for example, here, black played bishop g7, my question to you is, and this is a tough one, should White now go knight takes c6 and e5, bearing in mind all that information I gave to you before? Well, initial thoughts would suggest it would be a good idea for White to do that.
Looks like, right? Yeah.
Actually, the difference is that now this bishop isn't getting trapped on f7 because it can come out via g6 because that pawn is, of course, no longer protected. So e6 no longer traps it. And black is going to have quite a lot of isolated pawns. Not a great thing to have. However, let us rewind just a few squares. And the problem is, once white has inserted this move here, this pawn, as in accordance with the laws of the game of chess, can never go backwards. Okay. And which means potentially there's going to be a weak point here on e3, a bit of a hole. So in actual fact, in this position here, black can do something a little bit sneaky and just move the knight to h7, which was nicely created for the knight by virtue of that h5 advance. Now, my point is obviously why black's just threatening to take this pawn. And if we had a trade on this square here, I think the point is, well, actually, black's threatening a very sneaky check here, winning that bishop, by the way.
No, I see it.
Also, if both sides castle, I think this position's actually better for black because black can get a foothold in the center here.
That's nice.
And in particular, this is a little bit loose. So this is, I gave some thought to this position. Nobody else would have given some thought to this position. They would have just rushed through, plowed through. And I thought, what about, why not bishop g7? Would then knight take c6 be a good move? So I think in actual fact, black could happily have played bishop to g7 here. But don't forget, we're currently doing this cat and mouse situation where black has decided, no. I think I might be doing the old taking and the bishop h6 possibility. So I don't yet want to commit my bishop to g7. So black plays bishop d7 instead, and it's over to white to play a useful move that isn't yet queen d2. Have we got any candidates?
Okay, let me think. So, of course, the candidates which all of you probably also know who have watched the shows or who are part of the shows, there is always this idea to maybe push forward the G pawn. Maybe it's a bit too early, but it could be something.
Well, I mean, this is kind of a bit of prophylaxis, if you like. Black playing h5 is designed to prevent all this advancing on the king side. I mean, to play a move like g4 now would be, no offense, pretty terrible. Because you're losing a pawn here, you're weakening your pawn here, there's things here, and it's not like white is in any position to attack the king on the king side because the king isn't even over there on g8. So the whole point of h5 is it has stopped white from playing g4. Now, I guess white could play h4 in the hope that in a few moves' time black will castle and then he's ready to play his g4.
Would have been another idea. And what about short castling?
Short castling is definitely a possibility, but it's gonna, you're trying to keep the audience awake at this stage. And if you castle on the king side, how can it really be a Yugoslav attack if you castle on the king? Yeah, of course it's possible to castle on the king side, but then you're thinking, really, did I need that pawn here to help support that? You're not going to go g4 with the king over there. You might try and go f4 and f5 a little bit later, but then obviously you've got to control the g4 square. You've got to avoid that being too weak. It's just not really in the spirit of things.
Okay.
But yes, you're right. That's absolutely will be a possibility. So I think the only other waiting move was the move played in the game, which is to drop the bishop back to b3. Whereas it's generally on a, it's out of the firing line, no longer being on c4. So fair enough. So now finally black says, okay, I could continue possibly with yet another waiting move. I could maybe do a rook c8, possibly some expansion on the queen side. But no, black commits himself to bishop g7. And white says, go on then. Now I'm going queen d2. If you really fancy swapping off the knights and going on d4 and going bishop h6, now it's clear to everybody that's watching you've lost a tempo by going bishop g. So have you got any pride about yourself whatsoever? And black says, well, yeah, actually I do. I'm not going to play like that anymore. So instead black plays in a different way. And black played the move knight a5. So we're now about to see a bit of a hybrid of two systems, if you like. So the knights come here, very reasonable square, looks to eye up that square invasion, perhaps later in the game could potentially take that bishop if it so wants. But you notice we're having a bit of play on both sides. The h5 has been designed to prevent any attacking on the king side, and now black gets on with things over the queen. So it's still white useful move, castles queen side. Why not? Yes, White could still have castled kingside, I guess. Of course, that definitely would have been a possibility, but we just sweep that under the carpet.
Yes,
And
please.
now here, let's have a little talk about ways for black to progress. Of course, if at some stage he could just decide, you know what, I'm just going to castle kingside anyway, and that will give white maybe the green light to try and go ahead with some sort of counterplay or action on the king side there. I suppose another little plan might be actually to swap off this bishop and then potentially raz that a pawn down the board to try and open a line for the rook. That would have some sort of merit, that sort of plan. But instead, black played the move rook b8. And what particularly appealed to me about this game, it was the mix of systems. So we have kind of elements of the Saltis variation going on over there with black playing h5, albeit white hasn't actually played h4, so almost Dragadorfy like over there. And over this side of the board, we've got the Chinese variation going on with a little bit of a system. I'm not even. We've definitely, that was featured heavily in the. You haven't even advertised my my DVDs and such like.
I am almost certain that last month when we had this absolute crazy good offer that loads of people who still didn't have all three of your DVDs now have them. But if you still haven't taken this chance, and you're watching this all the time, now it is time to get the Fritz trainers. It's worth every single cent. You get one of the most entertaining Fritz trainers in the world. Yeah, you know the deal. Was that good? Yeah. Okay, we leave it in. We don't cut it out.
That's good enough. Yeah, brilliant. Now,
commercial
so
break.
As we can see, I've launched a little pawn to b5 and the knight to c4 plan. Would, for example, should result if white wants to preserve their dark square bishop, they would have to take, which would of course enable the rook to swing into action along the b file with a half open file. But equally, that pawn could advance to b4. We're going to come to that in a second. So it's over to white. And actually, this is a bit annoying for white, this position, because it's not entirely clear what he should do to try and make progress. Sure, there's other waiting moves that could be made, maybe king b1. But if he wants to actually get on with some serious action, he can't go bishop h6, obviously, to swap off the bishop. He can't go g4 to expand on the king side. He could maybe swizzle the rook to the center and try and break through the center. But then when black eventually does castle, he's going to look like a bit of a lemon with no rooks on the king side anymore to attack. So it's not so straightforward. White played a reasonable looking move and retreated the knight back to e2 with a couple of points. First and foremost, the bishop is attacking the pawn on a7. Yeah. And secondly, just maybe white might prepared to relocate a knight to the d5 square, possibly, which we can't deny is always a good square for a white knight. But black says, do you think you're attacking that pawn? I don't think so. I am playing b5 anyway.
Can I ask you quickly, what are your thoughts about that black? It's which move are we now at the 11th?
Pawn to b5 by black, move 12.
Move number 12. So black still hasn't castled. And
Correct.
In this particular position, this is actually totally legit because there is just nothing to fear at the moment that the king is in the middle. Or would you also consider in different situations maybe to go, that is a legit way to also progress and castle at one point?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically black's keeping the options open.
Yeah.
There's obviously risks associated with keeping the king in the middle. You have to monitor that.
That's what I'm always looking at. Exactly.
Open up.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's not really threatening anything. These pieces are square, and you're only one move away from castling and bringing the other rook into play. So
yeah, okay.
I think it's all about a matter of timing, really. I think when black decides that they're going to, if and when they decide they're going to castle. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be any particular reason to commit to casting, allowing the kind of bishop h6.
Understood. Yeah.
So I actually really like this. I really like this game, I have to say. The things I would do, those people that have acquired the Fritz trainer, the DVDs, will know that against the Chinese system, I'm not sure white should commit this bishop back here because there's lines where it could go back to e2 instead. But of course, white was already committed to b3 by the time that black switched into Chinese mode. So it was kind of a crafty little system. I really like this game, actually. So, for example, what could white do here? Well, one possible line, for example, would be knight to f4, when if we did have this, we would have a situation with the queen would soon be coming out to a5, and we'd be looking to focus, no doubt, on that
Looks
pawn
juicy.
here. And of course, if all these knights come to d5, that means the dragon bishop will already be homed in on that square.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, White thinks, oh, I can't be dealing with that. You know what? I'll have that pawn then. I'll have that pawn. At least it means you won't be advancing it down to a4 at some stage, and I'll just take that little pawn here. So actually, this position, though, I think Black has wonderful compensation for the pawn. He played a very obvious looking move here, which was just to switch the rook to the A file in anticipation of probably taking that and getting some action down here. But actually, I think quite a good move here would have been pawn to b4 immediately.
Well, that's action.
Yeah, leaving the rook here. But what you've got to remember, and of course, some moves I like to put on the board here, and some I like our listeners, viewers, listeners, and both, in fact.
Everything.
Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open. But the idea is, even though White can take this rook here, I'm going to be able to take that and that and that. But actually, oh my word. Do you know what? This is beautiful. I love these sort of little puzzles, right? So that we did little puzzles here as well. I haven't even looked at this, but let's suppose a bishop takes rook. This is great, isn't it? This is like, oh my word. So which should I take first? Should I take the bishop? Should I take the other bishop on b3? Or should I take the knight? Which way will I be able to guarantee getting 2 minor pieces for a rook? Well, the idea is if I took this one first, check, then this one, then I could take that one. But there's a danger that if I start taking them in the wrong order, the bishop on b8 will get protected, or the knight on a5 will be attacked. Just a simple thing, that. It's nice and simple. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. For me, it is almost certain that you have to take on c3 first.
But dude, this is what I'm saying. Okay, let's get it. So, but if you take on c3 first, and the queen takes back,
now
your knight might be under attack if you take that, and if the bishop takes that, you take that. So it's not like a 2 out of 3 chance. I think it's a 1 out of 3. So
beautiful. Thank you.
This is like a little deviation.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's good that we got this. Yeah,
but if you took the bishop first check, White has to take that back with the pawn. Then you take the knight. The queen's got to take. Then you take the bishop.
Yeah.
You get 2 juicy minor pieces for 1 rook. In a middle game, that is going to be absolutely devastating. And by the way, guess what you'd be doing soon then? Castling. Get the rook into the attack as well, for sure. So anyhow, but I think after b4, let's take a quick look at this. Knight to d5. So I think they'd have to move that attack knight. Then we could take this. Now there's a bit of a problem here, because which way do they take back? Essentially, the problem's going to be that if they take this way, then when we go knight takes knight, we might have like a queen c7 check attacking the bishop. And if it takes this way, then queen might overshoot to a5, threatening mate on a1 as well as the bishop on e7. So it's a little bit trickier than that. So for example, let's have a look at c takes b3, knight takes d5. So again, he can't take on d5 because we're just going to win the rook. So he does, of course, have to take here. But this is the beauty of this. This is what I love. Guess what we can finally do now? Oh, hello, did we all forget about that little move over here? Getting the action going down there. White would, of course, have to block it with a pawn, but now this would get, oh, lovely. Take that, thanks very much. Threatening, lots of things that might win material. Knight takes and takes it. And this is what I call compensation, my word, for the exchange. We're level on pawns, but we've got 2 immensely good bishops, and we're threatening probably e5.
How to stop that even, exactly.
And how do we get out of that? So this would be, that's absolutely fantastic for Black. That position there. But Black played a very reasonable move instead. Black played rook to a8, here attacking the bishop. And White decided to defend this bishop with the queen, potentially eyeing up this square here. I actually think whatever White did here, actually, I quite like Black's position. Queen e3 was played, and Black here continued b4. So let's see. It's just a little bit loose for white at the moment. We know the queen's still along that diagonal, although the queen's desperately trying to hang that.
What a
We've
cute
got
threat out of a sudden, right? Because of h5, which is something very, very, yeah, nice.
yeah, I think
indeed.
h5 obviously bringing into play. Certainly, should this bishop go absent without leave, which of course it has done by swizzling down there to take that pawn on a7. So the pawn's attacking the knight at the moment, and the knight came into d5. And this is again where we have this problem. Knight takes b3 check. Which way is white going to recapture? The problem being, if he takes with the c pawn, then we know after knight takes knight, we're going to have that queen c7 check.
Perfect.
Of the bishop and the king, of course. So white takes back with the a pawn. And then we have knight takes knight on d5. Which way is he going to recapture? He chose to take back with the rook. Let's have a look at what might have happened if he'd taken back with the pawn. So I still like now the move queen a5, which I mentioned earlier, attacking the bishop, potentially threatening this check here. But more to the point, after this bishop to here, bishop to h6, that move again, f4. And for example, well, I just think it's just going to be weak, basically. So I think, well, actually, of course, now might be a very good time to castle, but we could actually just take that pawn on d5.
Yes, very beautiful.
Because we would have a little checkmate down there. Is always nice. But yeah, there's something nice about just saying, oh yeah, I forgot I could castle. Yeah, but why didn't you tell me about that earlier? Yeah, no. So yeah, so there we go. So instead, white took back on d5 with the rook. So still, what are we doing here? Let's do a quick material count, and white is still a pawn to the good because of that little sacrifice to a pawn. But everything just seems so loose.
Yeah.
The queen is defending this, the bishop h6 options, the a file's open, and of course black does have two bishops, one of which moved immediately to the square c6, which I quite like. A nice little move here.
Sweet.
Attacking the rook. Now let's just see how things could have gone. Let's supposing the rook had just retreated and where black was going to go from here. Well, I quite like, for example, queen to d7, attacking that bishop. The bishop drops back. Bishop h6 again, f4, and queen over here now. And now we can see we've got, this is still loose, and we've got this going down. So we've got attacking here, attacking here, attacking here. And yeah, we could definitely castle as well, bring the other rook into the game. Lovely situation for black to have here. So after bishop to c6, white actually chose to play bishop b6, hitting the black queen. I still think there's plenty of good options here, but for black. But black chose queen c8, not a bad move at all. And what are the, so basically this bishop is just a bit loose, and of course we mustn't forget the rook is currently under attack. The rook swung over here to a5. Now we started attacking from both sides on the h file and the a file. That's a nice thing to do. Bishop h6, pinning the queen to the king, so it has to be f4, followed by rook takes a5, queen takes a5. Now I think again black's next move is absolutely fine, but I would have quite liked to see queen a8 here attacking the bishop, and this one here as well. That would have been nice, but black played queen a6 absolutely fine, and white decided, oh dear, what can I do? Don't forget that this is check, although it's not mate, it is a simple skewer that would just win a rook over here at the moment. So white felt queen to b6. Let's see if I can swap off the queens. But to be honest, although that's about the only thing he could have done, queen takes, and bishop takes e4. And talk about a nice endgame here for black. So what we've actually got a situation where black's got the bishop pair, he's regained his material, and does he need to, well, he's attacking g2 for starters here. Does he need to castle?
Perhaps
no, he does not. Of course he doesn't. We're in an endgame. We want the king in the middle of the board here. We're going to get the rook into play. King to d7. Yeah, bishop back to e3. And the rook finally comes into the c file. So didn't even need to castle. We've activated that rook. Things are looking pretty good here. And the next few moves are very nice, short and sweet move. White played pawn to c4. We could have taken that en passant. And equally, there's a couple of very nice little ideas here. Black could even now switch this rook over to the A file here. That would have been causing all sorts of problems, I think, in this sort of position here. But black kept it straightforward. D5 attacking the C pawn as it was. Knight to G3, and then the bishop went into D3. So this knight being completely dominated, this pawn being pinned here, and of course we're ganging up pressure here. White C5 by white, and then D4, and then essentially that's blocking the pawn. Let's see the poor old bishop. What does it do? Let's see, for example, bishop takes pawn, bishop check, king here, rook A8. How painful is that?
Goodness, checkmate ahead.
All sorts of horrendous things going down here. So the king, after d4, the white king played to d2 to attack the bishop. But we had a little swap here and we bagged yet another pawn. It's just simple chess here. Bishop to d6, pinning that c pawn. Knight e4, defending it, but then f5, forcing some simple swaps, really. So if you take here on d6, you're going to lose that. We've still got this mega pawn down here, of course. Not long to go. We took this, and took that. And suddenly, we're going to lose the first one of those pawns. But look at this.
Does it even matter?
It does not matter. We've got two lovely pawns. In fact, in this position here, facing this inevitable, look at that, the rook's even cutting off the king over here. We're just going to shuffle those guys straight down the board. White decided that this was a pretty good moment to do that resignation type thing. And you know, I have to say, I really likes this game. Totally, I just really like this game.
Absolutely sweet, yeah.
So a quick recap: we had the Hungarian variation offered, and white, as seems to be the way these days, bishop c4, white is avoiding the Hungarian. I never thought I would have seen that happen. You know, such a white seemingly forced to avoid playing a natural move, but bishop c4. But I like this little hybrid little system here that black played of delaying castles, playing a Chinese variation on one side of the board, on the other side, going all salters like with that little h5 move that you pointed out, keeps out the options of bishop h6 and thwarts white's kingside offensive plans.
That is some very, very interesting variation. And yeah, I'm very curious how popular it will become in the next couple of weeks, months, or even years, and what will happen, how to dodge the moves, what can be done about it, and all of that. But yeah, I'm very glad that you took a big look into this and already are ahead.
And we will continue to keep tabs, of course.
Absolutely.
Here on the Dragon Monthly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just need to recommend, I've seen already a lot of downloads, which is great, but for those of you who are not aware that Chris is actually analyzing this whole variation which we're talking about, and it's all available on the ChessBase news site. So do definitely download the PGN of this whole game and the annotation, because it's really insightful, and you should put it into the Dragon folder where it belongs, and then you should take it out when it's shortly before some tournament or game. Chris, thank you so much for this. I am looking forward to next time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.